Welcome back to our viewers here in Nigeria and all around the world. Let's switch gears now to the war in the Middle East, where the EU is calling for a de-escalation between Hezbollah fighters and the Israeli Defense Forces. This comes after a series of reported strikes in Lebanon. On Thursday, Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah made it clear to Israel a war might break out if the IDF launches a potential offensive against Lebanon. Mr. Nasrallah also singled out nearby Cyprus, threatening to target the small, divided Mediterranean island if it aids Israel in a potential war. And reacting to this, European Union spokesperson Peter Stano gave a reminder that Cyprus is a member of the EU, indicating that any threat on that country is a threat against the EU. Take a listen to him.
First of all, on the Cyprus part of your question, let me remind everyone that Cyprus is a member state of the European Union. That means European Union is Cyprus and Cyprus is European Union. That means any threat against one of our member states is a threat against the European Union. So in this sense, the European Union fully supports Cyprus as such, and the statement made in this context of the threats from Hezbollah by President of Cyprus. And regarding the first part of your question, of course, we are following very closely the situation on the border between Lebanon and Israel. This is a source of ongoing concerns. The European Union spoke about it on a number of occasions, that we are concerned by the growing tensions and confrontations. And we said already on a number of occasions that in line with the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1701, the European Union is urging all actors to do everything they can to de-escalate or to stop steps that lead to escalation, but de-escalation is very important to prevent further tensions and engage in meaningful negotiations. And in this context, we of course welcome the ongoing diplomatic efforts focused on de-escalation by international partners, namely France and United States.
Mr. Peter Stano, EU spokesperson. Well, let's get in more reactions now. The US says it does not want to see any more escalations between Hezbollah and Israel. This was relayed by US Department spokesperson Mr. Matthew Miller at a news conference in Washington, D.C. But his comments was broken off just a little bit after he spotted a big cockroach on the wall. However, that did not hinder him from addressing reporters in Washington, D.C.
We do not want to see escalation of this conflict. Hezbollah has increased the number of cross-border attacks over the past few weeks. You've seen dramatic attacks targeting civilian communities. Matt, I hate to interrupt, there's a big cockroach on the wall over your head there, so maybe need a... we'll defer that to no insecticide or roachicide in the briefing, Matt. It is an intense concern of ours, has been for some time. As I said, there are times where we have been more concerned about it. It has never gone away as a concern, but whenever you see an increase in strikes across the border, that magnifies our concern at any given moment. So of course we have intense concerns about it right now, which is why we are pursuing diplomacy to try to achieve a resolution. There is one shipment of high payload munitions that we have put under review, and that remains under review. That's not a bottleneck, that's a policy review. Other shipments of weapons have been moving regularly to Israel because we are committed to Israel's long-term defense, and that includes things that have nothing to do with the war in Gaza, but are capabilities related to Israel's long-term security, defending itself against, for example, the threat from Iran.
Thousands have gathered outside Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's residence in Jerusalem, calling for an end to the war in Gaza. The protests also saw demonstrators calling for the Prime Minister's resignation. According to local media, the mass protest also calls for snap elections as Israelis voice discontent with the government's handling of the conflict in Gaza.
We need the hostages home, the hostages held by Hamas, and we need the government to start taking action towards that and to move towards elections in our country. The government has caused so much pain and agony and we need them to go home and bring the hostages back now.
I think that the most important thing now that should be done, that Bibi's henchmen, all these cowards that surround him and waiting to his fall and to get some job, I think that it's their duty, maybe it's their last minute, just to revolt against him, because so far they were like little puppies and they are cowards and they don't bear any responsibilities for the horrible things that are done under the rule of Bibi, and they cooperate. It's the only chance that he'll be kicked out, and they maybe will save their honor a bit.
Away from the war in the Middle East, at least 2 railway workers have been killed and 9 others injured in a head-on collision between 2 trains in Chile. The incident occurred on the outskirts of the capital, Santiago, during a test run conducted by Chile's state railway company. According to officials in that country, the train being tested by the railway company collided with a freight train, which was reportedly carrying around 1,346 tons of copper. The Public Prosecutor's Office has now detained 2 officials as authorities investigate the accident. And a quick check on the weather now. A deadly wildfire which swept through several villages in southeastern Turkey has led to the deaths of at least 5 people. At least 44 others were also injured in the disaster, 10 of whom are said to be in very severe conditions. According to authorities, the fire started with the burning of crop stubble. Fanned by winds, the blaze moved quickly, affecting 5 villages. 4 emergency teams and 35 ambulances were set to the scene. The fire, which started late on Thursday, was brought under control today by firefighters. And it's one thing to battle a scorching heat wave. It's another to struggle with an acute water shortage crisis. But locals in India are dealing with both. Crowds can be seen queuing in long lines to fetch water from tankers while clinging onto plastic containers. The scene has become a common occurrence since the onset of summer, with people grappling with soaring temperatures over 47 degrees. India, along with much of South Asia and Southeast Asia, is really under very extreme temperatures that have caused schools to shut down in several countries, with urgent health warnings throughout the region. And speaking of East Asia, we can tell our viewers here in Nigeria and around the world that the southern region of China has been hit with its worst flooding in over 25 years. Severe flooding and landslides swept through the China city of Jilin after heavy rainfall triggered the incident. Streets, homes, and vehicles were submerged by flood waters, causing inconvenience to residents and disruption to traffic. At least 69 people have reportedly been rescued from their homes by boat, and local authorities are also delivering emergency supplies to families trapped at home. Meanwhile, schools in the area have suspended classes until further notice, as traffic police reported the collapse of one expressway and closures of multiple roads due to the flooding. Around a dozen people have been reported killed across the country. The city, which has not seen such floodwaters since 1998, has forced authorities to issue a level 1 flood emergency alert due to the disaster. Let's take you back to Moscow now, where residents have been taking cover following a severe hurricane. The powerful winds, coupled with heavy rainfall, thunder and lightning, blew sheets of metal and debris across the streets. Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin is warning residents of extreme weather conditions, including possible tornadoes and hail. The capital's health department has now reported 2 deaths and 18 injuries as a result of the heavy storm. Among the injured are 4 children who are in satisfactory condition. In In another development, South Korea's military has fired yet another warning shots after several North Korean soldiers briefly crossed the border. This marks the third of such incidents this month, according to the country's Joint Chiefs of Staff. The incident occurred on Thursday when the North Korean soldiers crossed the military demarcation line running through the middle of the demilitarized zone. Similar incidents took place on Tuesday this week and on the 9th of June. On both occasions, which Seoul said appeared accidental, the North Koreans retreated quickly after warning shots were fired. And let's turn attention and focus now to the politics in the United Kingdom, where there has been allegations of election betting ahead of the July 4th general election. This news is one of many concerns for British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who's incredibly angry after learning of the incident. Mr. Sunak has promised to boot out anyone found to have broken gambling laws. 4 people linked to the Prime Minister are currently being investigated over allegations of betting, including the Conservative Party's Director of Campaign, Tony Lee, and a police officer in Mr. Sunak's close protection team. 2 Conservative election candidates, Laura Saunders and Craig Williams, have confirmed they were being looked into by the Gambling Commission. However, Mr. Sunak has said the matter is being investigated properly by relevant authorities in the UK, and anyone found to have broken the rules will be knocked out of the Conservative Party. All right, this week, Dutch Prime Minister Mr. Mark Rutte cleared a significant hurdle on the path to becoming the next Secretary General of NATO. He now looks almost certain to take over as leader of the military alliance when current head Jens Stoltenberg steps down in October. Well, let's get more now. We're joined by DW correspondent Arthur Sullivan, who joins us live from Berlin. Arthur, great to see you again as always. Why was this week so significant for the Dutch Prime Minister to become the next Secretary General of NATO?
So Mark Rutte, the Dutch Prime Minister, has been the clear front runner for months because he's been backed by the leading NATO allies such as the US, the UK, France and Germany. But there was some potential obstacles, and that was primarily the opposition of Hungary's Eurosceptic Prime Minister Viktor Orban. Now, Orban has, of course, maintained quite close ties with Moscow throughout the war in Ukraine, and both Rutte and Orban have had quite a stormy relationship during their times meeting at the EU table during their tenures at the helm of their country's governments. But the reason this week was so important is because Rutte did a deal with Orban whereby Orban agreed he would support him as the leader of NATO if he would allow Hungary to opt out of NATO activities which supported Ukraine. So that deal basically paves the way for Rutte, and at the same time Slovakia, another country which is led by Eurosceptic populists with pro-Moscow leanings, they also said they would support Rutte. That meant that the only person standing in his way was the Romanian President Klaus Iohannis, who also wanted to run for the role of Secretary General of NATO, but he hadn't picked up any support, and the fact that Hungary and Slovakia rode in behind Rutte meant that he had to effectively pull out of the race, and that means that Rutte now has unanimous support. He's the only candidate in the race, and he's now guaranteed to be the next Secretary General.
And Arthur, what sort of figure is Rutte, and what could possibly be the expectations of him as the next leader of NATO?
Well, he's been leading the Netherlands since 2010 as Prime Minister, so he's hugely experienced, and he's actually the longest serving Prime Minister in the country's history. And the fact that he has stayed in power for so long really is testament to his personality, his general likability and his considerable political skills, because he's survived a number of political scandals in that time. He's actually earned the nickname Teflon Mark. He's led 4 different government coalitions. He's worked with various political parties of all sorts of stripes, both right and left. The centre-right party he leads isn't even that large, and yet he still is always been seen as the obvious candidate to lead. He's even managed to maintain reasonably cordial relations with the Netherlands' far-right leader, Geert Wilders. So Dutch politics is very consensus-driven. That's quite similar to the kind of decision-making process that NATO requires. So it's quite easy to see why he has won so much support. That ability to get along with people, to manage people of different backgrounds politically, it's obviously what's going to serve him well at NATO. And the other thing is he's been a consistent champion of Ukraine and its fight against Russia, which is a key prerequisite for any aspiring leader. But perhaps the biggest challenge for Rutte at NATO is going to be managing the transatlantic relationship between the European members and NATO's most important member, which of course is the US. And the prospect of Donald Trump returning to the White House has made some in NATO worry about the future of that alliance. But crucially, Rutte has himself cultivated quite strong relations with Trump. And during Trump's presidency, Rutte earned the nickname the Trump Whisperer for his ability to keep Trump on side during tense moments. And if Trump returns to the White House, he may well need those skills at the helm of NATO.
I'm told that you have to go now, but allow me to squeeze in one final question. I'm just concerned as to what other barriers and hurdles lie before Mr. Rutte is formally named as the NATO boss.
Well, he's going to take over officially from the outgoing Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg on October 1st. That's when his term ends after 10 years in charge. And the formal process, it's quite sort of diplomatic formalities at this stage. So the NATO ambassadors to the various member states, they're going to meet next week in an informal sort of traditional gathering known as the Dean's Coffee. And that's where the so-called Dean, that's the longest serving ambassador to NATO, in this case it's the Croatian ambassador, they will confirm consensus for Rutte. And then early next month there's a very large NATO summit taking place in Washington, D.C. to mark the alliance's 75th anniversary. That's going to be a big event for NATO, and it's going to be Rutte's first chance to meet the members as its next leader. Now, he is still the caretaker Prime Minister in the Netherlands, but he's due to step down next month as a new government takes place, and then he'll have a couple of months to unwind and get himself ready for this next role as the Secretary General.
It's a fine place to leave it. DW correspondent Arthur Sullivan, live for us in Berlin. Thanks indeed. Right, back here in the continent, in Kenya precisely, where at least one person has died. A 29-year-old man killed during nationwide demonstrations against a new finance bill, and 200 others have been confirmed injured. Anti-tax protesters in Kenya are in shock because Rex Kanyeke Masai died of gunshot wounds, according to a doctor from a hospital in the capital, Nairobi. Police fired tear gas and water cannon at largely peaceful protesters near Parliament as lawmakers were debating proposals to bring in new taxes. Amnesty International have now accused the police of using excessive force to contain protesters, saying more than 100 people were arrested on Thursday. The protests dubbed Occupy Parliament began on Tuesday. The public outcry forced the government to withdraw some of the contentious provisions, including a 16% tax on bread and an annual 2.5% tax on vehicles. Earlier, the VOA's Mohammed Yusuf spoke to my colleague Layo Larinde on the latest development in Kenya.
People in Kenya lit fires and blockaded streets as they rallied Thursday to demonstrate hikes that many fear will worsen the cost of living.
Today there was sporadic protest because that comes after the members of parliament voting the financial bill 2024 yesterday. So there were protests in, we understand that there was protests from on the Mombasa to Nairobi. The roads were blocked. Some few kilometers from the capital Nairobi, there was also protest, and there were some constituencies where members of parliament voted for the finance bill 2024. Some of the constituents were not happy, and they were calling for the members of parliament to resign. And of course, there was also the sad incident where a protester was killed, and there were also some of these youths who went to the city mortuary to view his body and also console the family. That has been so far what's been going on today, but the protest is still ongoing in some parts of the country.
And we understand that one person has died, just like you've just mentioned, but he died from gunshot wounds. Help us break down, the circumstances around this, especially if the police is saying, they used and fired tear gas and water cannons at the protesters.
most of the protests I've covered it on Tuesday and Thursday. It's been really peaceful, but this incident happened late in the evening. And I remember last night at 7:30 Nairobi time, there were a group of police officers clearing roads, clearing streets because there were still many youths in the streets. And after 30 minutes after that incident, that is after that, witnessing that movement of police, that's when we heard that a protester was shot. But up to now, we understand that the body is still in the central city mortuary in Nairobi, and the postmortem is yet to be done. But all the fingers now is pointed at the police. But generally, this is a very protest that's different from what we have seen in Nairobi previously. It's been really peaceful, and many youths have been really peaceful. We've seen friendly instances where police and the youths were engaging each other in a very cordial and friendly manner in the streets of Nairobi.
Now, these protests began on Tuesday, and the government had to bow to pressure. We've seen them withdraw on some of the taxes, including the 16% tax on bread and an annual 2.5% tax on vehicles, but that does not seem to stem the anger of the mainly youthful protesters, has it?
Not really. Actually, what you've just said about the bread and motor vehicle, that was just an announcement that was made on Tuesday morning before the protest began, as set as when the ruling party members went to the president. That was just a statement that they made. But actually what we know from yesterday's debate and passing of the bill actually is passed as it is, as it was proposed, and all the clauses and all the pages were passed as it is. And now it has been passed and has gone to the committee to look at some of those issues. But that was just a statement that was made, but nothing was actually changed in that document. And that anger and the continuation of the protests actually comes from that. And also remember, this is a government that was campaigning that under pretext of hustlers, that we care about you, unlike the previous government. This is a government that people of the poor are going to form. And that hasn't been the case. And the borrowing has been going on. There have been more taxes. And for the past 20 years in governments, Kenyans are used to seeing developments, roads, and that is not what's been going on for the past 2 years. Mostly emanates from that. Of course, education sector, many students are complaining not getting the money on time, and it's been reduced. All those sort of things actually it's been, and Kenyans across many parts of Africa, of course, this issue is the same of high cost of living, and that is, they feel that this goes on is going to be too much for them to bear.
The view is Mohammed Yusuf speaking earlier with my colleague Layo Olarinde on Network Africa. And it's the final lap of the program. Thanks indeed for staying with us. Let's get in more stories now around the continent. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, has called on the world to not forget the conflict in Sudan, which has been engulfed by violence since April last year. Mr. Grandi is pushing for peace as he visited a transit center in Rienk, set up by UNHCR in South Sudan's Upper Nile State near the Jordan border with Sudan. The center was originally built to accommodate 4,000 people, but now has more than 13,000 people living in and around it. Many who have recently arrived are Sudanese people who are escaping fighting in El Fasher in Sudan's Darfur region.
At the peak of the emergency last year, 4,000 people per day were going through Rank. Now this figure has decreased, but there is still about 1,000 people a day. Imagine 1,000 people a day arriving in a rich country. It would be a huge problem. And yet here, South Sudan keeps its borders open, and the local community welcomes the people that are coming, in spite of the burden that they represent, of the resources that they need to be kept here. I'm here during the week of World Refugee Day to say, don't forget the refugees from Sudan. Don't forget the neighboring countries, Chad, Central African Republic, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Egypt, that are all generously receiving people, but that are facing challenges of their own. Here in South Sudan, a country that has seen 2 civil wars in 10 years, and which is still emerging from this conflict, this crisis, this arrival of hundreds of thousands of returnees could be very destabilizing.
And it was another World Refugee Day marked here in Lagos, Nigeria, where the UN Human Rights Commission, alongside officials from the Nigeria immigration and civil organizations, drew attention to the plight of refugees, especially those who have made Nigeria home. Activities to commemorate the day in Lagos included song presentations, cultural performances, and sensitization on the plight of refugees. Head of the UNHCR office in Lagos, Mr. Godwin Gore, says the day not only offers an opportunity for awareness on refugees, but awareness on options available to refugees. This year's theme is in solidarity with refugees and their specific needs.
To offer assistance and protection to refugees. Mainly is the registration of asylum seekers, issuing refugee status to asylum seekers, ensuring that those who have been granted refugee status get documentation. They're able to have that freedom of movement in Nigeria. They're also able to get access to livelihood opportunities, access education, and also living in harmony and peace without any problems of like physical and legal protection needs.
As the National Commission for Refugees, Migrants and Internally Displaced Persons, that is the coordinating agency for all refugee-related affairs, always has its door open to receive partnership from different partners, whether it's from the government, whether it's from civil society. We collaborate very strongly with the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, UNHCR, as well as other UN agencies and also state government agencies. For example, in Lagos, we have very strong collaborations with the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund, the Lagos Office of Disabilities, and other Lagos state agencies. And our doors are continuously open to partner with whatever agencies are available, even civil society, private sector, that are willing to integrate refugees into their programs. Refugees are human beings just like you and I. They are not special persons that that need any extra effort. They can be integrated seamlessly. Some of them are doctors, some of them are lawyers. They can be integrated seamlessly into various private sector and even the government circles.
And a bit of tech now. For some people, the AI chatbot, ChatGPT, is nothing new. However, NIGPT is Nigeria Info Generative Pre-trained Transformer. NIGPT is an AI model centered on Nigeria and designed to deliver comprehensive insights into the country while respecting its cultural value.
On November the 30th, 2022, OpenAI, under the leadership of Sam Altman, launched an AI chatbot and virtual assistant, ChatGPT. Designed to mimic human-like conversation, ChatGPT uses generative AI technology to create content from text prompts. Whether you need a detailed explanation, a creative story, or just a friendly chat, ChatGPT can provide the help you need.
It's a technological epiphanic moment.
Fast forward to June 2024, and we have NIGPT, Nigeria Info's generative pre-trained transformer. NIGPT aims to take things further by providing real-time indigenized solutions to the information needs of Nigerians.
For each invention and business case, there is always room for improvement. As such, we have followed in Sam Altman's footsteps to first of all identify ChatGPT's limitations and subsequently improve its service offering with regards to Nigerian-specific and African-specific questions.
So, what makes NIGPT stand out? Unlike ChatGPT, which provides summarized information on global topics, NIGPT dives deep into the specifics of happenings in Nigeria. In doing so, it captures the essence of Nigeria's unique values and offers detailed, reliable information promptly.
So ChatGPT says
in a comparison demo between ChatGPT 3.5 and 4.0 and NIGPT 1.0 and 1.1, NIGPT offers something new by delivering more Nigeria-specific information.
ChatGPT answers, as of my last update in 2022, Bola Ahmed Tinubu has not served as president of Nigeria. Nigeria's baby answers that President Ahmed Bola Tinubu's address at the United Nations General Assembly Onga in 2023 contained several key messages.
With features set to surpass current expectations, NIGPT aims to replace the phrase Google it with Ask NIGPT for all information needs.
I think it shows that a local team can actually build some of these systems, train the system on the data, and give relevant culture-specific answers, which is what we need. Why? Because the neural network has been trained on Nigerian-specific data, which is more relevant to our ecosystem locally.
We looked at OpenAI and that bias for information which exists because it is not local. And we said, hey, wait a minute. If questions about Nigeria are not a priority to this system, let us make questions about Nigeria a priority to ours and create an AI system that is able to answer country-specific questions that the legacy players cannot answer.
AI is transforming our world, one conversation at a time. And as we look to the future, it remains to be seen how NIGPT will continue to evolve and impact not just Nigeria, but potentially the world.
Well, it's amazing the power of artificial intelligence. You may want to check out just how that functions, NIGPT. And finally, on the program, everyone, it's no news that Russian President Mr. Vladimir Putin has visited North Korea earlier in the week. Host country, Mr. Kim Jong-un, treated his friend to a great welcome and hospitality. As part of each other's tradition, one thing is certain, which is souvenirs. Mr. Kim got a Russian-made arrows as present from Mr. Putin, got two beautiful white dogs in return. Earlier in the week, both leaders enjoyed a spin in the new car and took turns to drive the vehicle. It's safe to say the North Korean leader, who knows his friend far too well, who might just be a lover of dogs. It's amazing to see these two allies, their sheer friendship and, of course, bilateral ties. And that does it for us here on The World Today for today and indeed the week. On behalf of the production team and everyone here, thanks for watching. I'm Kelly Giga. We urge you to stick around here. Sports News is next with Byron. Please stay with us.